Yeah, but I thought that was going to be a 3-1 at best, most likely a 3-2 either way. But instead, he proved us wrong. Either way, we are ready for this very first match of the final stage. It's big. We're in the round of 24 on the right bottom side. It's MaSa.
Playing for OSC Elite. And of course, up here in the top left-hand side, hailing from Russia, a player with a lot of talent behind him. In the red, it's SKillous.
Oh, he's getting a lot of love from everybody in here. Super cool to see so many people showing up here in the Cybersport arena. These guys are excited. They are ready to cheer for some Protoss magic over here, Piggy.
Hey, not just Protoss magic. MaSa, the Terran wizard, the man you were just talking about up there on the desk just a few minutes ago. He has thrown out some crazy styles, and he's good at pulling his opponent into a dark, strange place they've never been in a Starcraft match before. So, I mean, SKillous, in the past, we've seen a lot of success with Phoenix Colossus. We've seen Colossus play, Phoenix play so on point. MaSa has really looked best when he's proxying, when he's dropping all over the place in the mid-game. I can't remember the last time I've seen MaSa play late-game TVP.
Yeah, but he does have those moments, a little bit like Kalazur, right, where it's like in the middle of the game. I don't want to call it a real late game yet, as we do have a gas steal, by the way, and there's a lot of discussion on whether this is worth it or not, whether this is annoying or not. Some pros players say, like, yeah, this is really annoying, and Terrans are like, no, we really don't care. Go ahead and do it. You're wasting money. We'll talk a little bit about that later. I do feel that MaSa has a little bit of that Kalazur in him as well, where if you do give him, let's say, that 4 to 6 medevacs phase in the game, right, where he does have 2.5, 3 bases, MaSa can really hit his stride there. And I'm a tiny bit worried there for SKillous, because I don't think that SKillous is worse than MaSa. But when it comes to multitasking, if you do give MaSa the opportunity to have, let's say, 70, 80 supply of bio, and it's dead even, I do believe that MaSa has the skill to really find openings in the defenses of SKillous.
Yeah, that's like I feel like MaSa only really comes alive when there's 4 things happening at once. He lives for those moments, dude. He's so comfortable in them. So definitely a player who will look good in those scenarios. Now, we've seen the gas steal. You mentioned that before. There is always the option for MaSa to take a quicker second gas on the low ground rather than having to fully clear the assimilator. But the assimilator just gives a bit of scouting information. It can be a little bit of a distraction if you're doing any follow-up pressure and you attack move some units. It can distract a few Marines. But for now, the Marine first, no Reaper. Multiple Marines, reactor on the way, factory comes down, and a nice quick bunker. MaSa not wanting to let SKillous get in there and disrupt his opening.
Yeah, we saw this from Clem yesterday as well in one of the games where he just kind of expected his Protoss opponent to open up with a dab, shade to the other side of the map. It's like, well, if I just skip the Reaper, I'm going to get 3 Marines very quickly. And MaSa playing this even safer than Clem did. He's like, I'm going to get a bunker here as well, and he's not going to take any damage. I would like to see him let his shade finish up, actually, because the Marines were so far out of position. I think, obviously, he would win that fight, the one-on-one against that Marine, and could maybe get an even better scout as well.
Wanting to play it safer there, of course, not knowing if a Hellions about to pop out. SKillous not wanting to take the risk. He does scout that second gas, sees the Widow Miners come out as well, has a good idea of what has happened so far. Oracle is on the way so far for SKillous. You know, you've got to love the one Oracle just for the tagging ability, but ooh, a very fast Twilight Council follow-up.
Yeah, obviously Cyber Forest is a tricky map, right? You just don't really know. This time he does let the adapt. I think he was maybe even looking for the Widow Mine there, because that would have been a sick play. Imagine if the Widow Mine is there, splashes over 4 or 5 SCVs, the Oracle shows up, one-shots everything. That would have actually been a very, very cool play if that would have played out like that. But MaSa moved the mine. The mine is currently, it's on the north side of the orbital.
And we are going to see the Raven on the way here as well for MaSa. SKillous adding more gateways. I'm very curious to see what upgrade. It's going to be Blink. Okay, Blink there. Gives you a lot of flexibility, a lot of maneuverability in the mid-game.
Oh, doesn't see that though. The mine, that is.
Yeah, it does end up getting the tag down, of course, realizing it's going to be a Raven build. If you don't see Cloak on the way, there's not really any other choice there. Forge going down for SKillous on 2 base. You know, this is an interesting situation because you're so worried about tank pushes coming across this map, Roddy. Do you really delay the 3rd base? Do you go for just a lot of Blink Stalkers with +1 attack here and then just go into a fast charge?
Or maybe even fast Colossus after all of this. That's still a possibility as well. I must say I'm a little bit surprised by the build that SKillous chose on this map, because Cyber Forest is so small. Like you said, there are so many tank pushes that are strong. Whether MaSa moves out immediately or waits a little bit or does it later, I'm actually kind of shocked to see him go for this build. If this is like a Port Alexander, Oracle into Blink makes sense to me, right? Because you have so much wiggle room with those Blink Stalkers. You can really shave off a whole bunch of units. it's a little bit risky. SKillous is going up to 3 bases. I'm not sure if this build is going to play out perfectly for SKillous, but maybe he can surprise me and maybe he can get some magic done with these Stalkers.
Yeah, he's going to start posturing around so far. The Oracle comes in again, does end up tagging those important tech units, sees that there's an engineering bay down, the attack upgrades on the way for MaSa. MaSa's tank count, his marine count continuing to grow ever faster.
Templar Archives already as well. He's just doing it all, Pick. It's a 3-base opening on Cyber Forest with Blink, with a +1 armor. Now he's getting a Templar Archive, so probably indeed charge right after this, because you're going to need something to eventually actually fight. At the moment, he has nothing that's actually good in a straight-up fight. There we do have charge immediately, and then I guess the dream is a good Archon Zealot engagement?
Yeah, I would think so here. I think you're going to cut it low, cut the probe count though. You know, you're going up to a lot of production right now as SKillous. I don't think you can go far above 50 probes. I think cutting here at 48, pumping out a lot of army until you're sure what's happening, that's a good way to do it. You don't want to go too hard onto that third base. And a nice little blink in. Just little bits of damage, but you want to keep these Stalkers alive. That's your only anti-air for now.
No, he absolutely wants to keep them alive, but shaving off a couple of these Marines that don't have combat shield yet, that's obviously very nice. 4 Stalkers will one-shot it. This was a good little move. I mean, he got an SCV, got 1 or 2 Marines, and he obviously still knows where MaSa is. MaSa does drop the 3rd CC, but I think it is safe to say that when he does move out, don't want to call it an all-in, but he's pretty damn committed. He needs to get something done with his first big move out.
Yeah, the Marine does come in. Good scouting there for MaSa. Is going to see that there's a handful of probes on that base. Give it another minute. That's a fully saturated third for the Protoss player. You know there's 3 Nexi that could be pumping that up. +2 armor starting up here. Charge is finished. SKillous going to start to get into that force. The Oracle continuing to tag. Great Blink Stalker control continuing to wear down a few of these Marines, but the shields is now done. The medevac healing strong. MaSa only losing a single Marine there.
Yeah, so that Liberator, I think, is meant to pull the Stalkers out of position, and then the Stalkers cannot shave off the Marines when MaSa does finally move out. There we do have it. MaSa's going to stim forward immediately, snipes a Stalker or 2 even there. The Guardian Shield, I think, is a little bit early because he's not even close to those Zealots, and that Liberator has already gotten 5 workers picked.
Yeah, there's not a lot of anti-air here. A couple sentries, only 3 Stalkers left. Forces more Stalker Warpins in the main. That was a nice low-risk maneuver from MaSa, losing a few Marines, one of his most expendable units. He keeps all of his tech units alive, and his 3rd command center is finished. MaSa is actually up 4 workers right now, Roddy. I mean, we talked about how SKillous was kind of going for a lot of different tech, and because of that, did not take the 3rd that early. Now has all the tech available, but there's no splash. It's just Archons and Zealots, and you're on an even worker count with the Terran. We can see the supply gap starting to widen. MaSa's production really just rolling out a gigantic biotank mine force.
Yeah, I love the mines in the mix here as well. That's going to be so effective against these Zealots that are coming in. I really love it, man. SKillous has just been so paranoid about MaSa moving out. He was always afraid to truly chrono boost out workers, right? To really go ham on the economy. And MaSa has just played a very smart economic game. And right now, I love MaSa's army a lot more than I love SKillous' army.
Yeah, there's a handful of Zealots in there, but really not that many for SKillous. An anti-armor missile going to go down as well, but very nice engage with the charge. Zealots getting right on top of that bio. It looks like he's going to take out all the important tech units. Zealots flanking into the back of the natural at the same time.
I cannot believe how well this went for SKillous. Those 2 Zealots, they soaked up 2 mine shots and splashed all over the bio. Those were some real traitor mines. We've got a big Zealot weapon in the main base as well. A couple of SCVs went down already in either base. The Oracle's still there. Damn, SKillous just turned this around completely.
Wow, turning the game upside down in just a moment. The Stalker's starting to take out the SCVs, and even more Zealot Warpins in the main base. That Warp Prism going to try to get out of there. MaSa does end up taking it out, just barely, but SKillous has done some very nice damage, resetting all of those important tech units. A lot of medevacs fell, a lot of the bio fell. There's no more tanks or mines on the field, and SKillous moves up to the 4th base.
I still do think that SKillous needs something else soon, right? Because that bio army is going to be even bigger next time. And Archon Zealot Immortal, I mean, those mines, they hurt MaSa so much more than what they actually did. Only 2 mines went off, but both time on an individual Zealots, and no splash damage all over the Marines. The first one hurt, the second one hurt even more. I do think it's very smart that SKillous is going for that Robo Bay now, because I would love to see him add a couple of Colossus in the mix, as I think would be the ideal choice. Disruptors, you could do it, but I really think that Colossus would make a lot more sense here.
We are going to see both players pulling back and trying to re-establish their economies. MaSa does still have an incredible worker count. Despite the damage he sustained, he has been non-stop building workers this game, and he still holds the lead in that regard. The upgrades are roughly tied. The armor advantage goes to SKillous, but of course, MaSa has an armor and an attack upgrade himself. 2-2 now starting up for MaSa. And he is starting to venture out onto this map. Just with the bio, though, not bringing out any of his tech units. This is low commitment aggression. He doesn't want to lose any of these medevacs.
Yeah, SKillous going to have to split up his forces here a little bit. Drops a couple of force fields, grabs a couple of Marauders for free. First Colossus is on the way. You know, Big, just to go back a little bit to that previous move out of MaSa, the confidence and courage on that young man SKillous. He looks at an army that's way bigger than his, and he's like, you know what, I'm going to warp in 5 Zealots on the other side of the map because I think I'll be fine either way. SKillous really is playing with confidence, like you said. He's got momentum out of that knockout bracket, finds a few more Marauders, he's in the main base. Damn, this young Russian Protoss is looking good, Vic.
He is on fire right now. This Warp Prism causing so much trouble for MaSa. He finally does manage to take it out, but once again, chaos in the Terran base. MaSa tries to answer with a little bit of his own harassment. An EMP lands on all of those Immortals, very nicely done, but the defense just is not organized, it's not together.
No, MaSa's all over the place. The funny thing is there is a Colossus out somewhere. I don't know where it is. There's a second one on the way. Okay, it's joining the party a bit later. But Skill is just so confident. Okay, that Colossus is going to get picked off. But at least it dragged the bio a bit out of position. There is a tiny drop in the main base. But Skillous is on top of that as well. 26 SCVs has gone down. He does not have thermal lens yet, by the way. That's something I'd kind of like to see him research. But confidence, that's what it is. Skillous is making attacks that he doesn't even need to make. But I think he's just like, I can get away with it. I feel good enough about this.
He's playing a smooth flowing game of Starcraft right now. Skillous has taken the upgrade lead with that +3 armor. He's adding his own attack upgrades. He's still got that same core of 4 Immortals anchoring down his army that have just given him so much value throughout the many fights in this game. MaSa keeps losing his important units, but those 4 Immortals, I'm worried to figure out how many kills each one of those has, because they've been here since the beginning. The bio comes down, the Ghost gets sniped by the Stalkers blinking forwards. The Raven gonna try to use an anti-armor missile, but such a scary force from Skillous.
This is a little bit silly by Skillous. Even though he's doing great, please get a Warp Prism, please get your thermal lens right. He's got a lot on way, but he's just feeling so good. He blinks forward again. Skillous, I mean, he doesn't have to do this, but he's doing it anyway, Pig.
The Colossus just dishing out the splash damage from behind. A few of those Immortals finally do fall here. The anti-armor missile giving MaSa a tiny edge, but it's not enough. Skillous takes game number 1 in decisive fashion.
Those Widow Mines, I think, kind of is what won him the game, because I really felt that that push was scary. There was a lot of potential in that push. 2 mines just fired all over the bio.
Yep.
Only 2 Zealots went down. At the same time, Skillous was able to just completely take all momentum away from MaSa. He's like, no, now I'm going to harass. And from that point on, I felt almost all the fighting happened on MaSa's side of the map.
Yeah.
Skillous just made some great calls there.
You know, it's an interesting thing. I agree with you 100% on those Widow Mines. I know a lot of people who are maybe not as experienced playing the game, but watch a fair bit, they say, are these Widow Mines just random? Is that how they work? But you've got to remember that as a Terran player, if you've actually got your bio stimmed up front and focus firing quite well, you're gonna, not even focus firing, but simply putting out damage output in front of the mines, you're gonna eliminate those front individual targets, and the Widow Mines will automatically track onto a new target, and they'll automatically tend to find the center of the Protoss army. But it felt like MaSa didn't really expect Skillous. Like, he'd scanned the army, and so that's pretty small. He was still sieging up his tanks, moving his bio forward, and Skillous just jumped on top of him. MaSa was a little bit busy pulling his bio back, stimming. Because of that, the Widow Mine shots dragged into his own units. So it was partly a surprise factor there for Skillous.
Don't forget that maybe he was distracted by the Warp Prism that showed up in his natural as well, right?
Absolutely.
That could very well be it as well. Of course, we don't always know what MaSa is looking at, but that really turned this game upside down, because the numbers, they look totally all right for MaSa. Even got himself a little bit economically ahead. The upgrades of Skillous were not overwhelming. He was only going for armor. Even in the end of that game, he just had 0-3, but he's like, yeah, that's all I need. I've got Immortals. With +3 armor, they are pretty good. I think a pretty fun and wild first game, kind of what I expected for this round of 24 matchup.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of those maps where I was a little bit worried for the young Russian Protoss player, but he manages to take it down, the Canadian veteran. He's got another chance here again, guys. We're going to be launching into map number 2. It's on New Repugnancy. hailing from Canada, representing OSC Elite in the top right-hand side of the map. In the blue, it's MaSa.
And in the left bottom side of New Repugnancy, look at the main base of the young Protoss, who has had a remarkable run throughout that knockout bracket. It is the one and only SKillous. The CIS region really sticking together here, Pick. It definitely feels that we've got a home crowd favorite here in SKillous as well.
Hells yeah. A lot of support for the young player, and it's hard not to support him. I remember watching this guy playing WCS Winter, and I immediately became a fan watching those matches online. I was literally just skimming through VODs and kind of catching up, and I remember pausing and just going back and watching all of his series because I went, wow, this kid's actually got a lot of talent. Some of the games he was stringing together were just incredible. And I was instantly a fan, so good to see him bringing it onto the main stage. I usually expect a player to go from that sort of online performance to falling out in his first big stage match. So far, though, he has strung together an incredible run. He's eliminated Soul, he's eliminated TLO, Risky, Salir. He's here one game up against MaSa in the final elimination bracket. This Protoss player is looking like a scary opponent.
Yeah, he just shows great game sense, right? For such a young guy. I've seen a couple of his online matches as well. He had a remarkable game a while ago against Marine Lord on Port Alexander where, without exaggeration, he probably lost like 30 to 35 probes. I'm like, okay, this game is super over. And everybody else thought it was super over. And then he just made the most random and almost kind of wonky, just pure Sentry Colossus push, because that was the only thing he could afford. He was only mining gas at one point, and then he just won, even though he was heavily outmined. His army was tiny small, but he just dropped great force foot after great force foot. I'm like, the fact that he's even able to win games like this, the ones that he really shouldn't win, just really shows that he has already great understanding of this game.
Yeah, that's a quality, the ability to kind of keep on playing and just look for edges and dig for those mistakes from your opponent, even when you feel like the game should be lost. Having that sort of mental stability to do that, one of the most important skills of a top StarCraft player. MaSa, of course, has shown an ability to dig deep under pressure as well. He is not a player who is easily flustered. Often says he kind of comes out and just plays these off-meta builds. I feel like MaSa is never a guy who just follows what the best Terrans in the world are doing. He's always got his own slightly different brand of Terran. I
do think this is better for MaSa since he opened up with the Reaper, even though the Reaper got nothing done yet. It does, of course, always keep the Adept at home a little bit. I don't know what the follow-up is going to be, but maybe MaSa wants to be a tiny bit more aggressive, and maybe then he can force some mistakes upon Skillous, right? I've definitely seen Skillous falter a little bit against certain multi-prong aggression. Look at this Reaper already being annoying, blocking the gate. It's going to grab its first probe. The only thing that MaSa doesn't know yet is that it's a Twilight Council. I'm sure he would love to see, but maybe the Stalker and the extra gates is a minor indication already that this could very well be a straight Blink opening.
Absolutely. We do have a Widow Mine on the way, as well as a Viking. A Viking is a very useful harassment unit, but most useful when your opponent opens up Stargate. Definitely something which shows that he doesn't really know exactly what tech he's up against just yet, but the Reaper, well-timed, comes in, sees the delayed Robo, sees the Twilight going, and he confirms it's Twilight Robo. Good chance it's going to be Blink, and the Reaper getting yet another probe there. Very nicely done by MaSa.
Well, that's an absolute MVP Reaper, man. Getting the scout off in the end and getting 3 probes, that already feels really good. Now MaSa's only down a couple workers, and of course with the 2 orbital commands, that means that now MaSa is mining quite a bit more than the young Skillous. There's a Robo as a follow-up, and even if the Viking is not the most useful if there's no Stargate, like you said, you can still land it in the back of a base when the units are out of position, and it actually kills workers very quickly. And of course you can just land it and use it for a ground push as well, together with some Marines and tanks like we've seen in the past. What MaSa is potentially going to do is maybe move out once the Viking shows up. On the other end, moving out early against 5-6 Blink Stalkers. If they are outside of your base, it's probably better to stay at home as a Terran player, right? Otherwise you just lose Marine after Marine after Marine, and it becomes painful.
Yeah, a player like Skillous would want you to do that. I love that Widow Mine positioning there as well. And another one gets a Stalker pick off. Good start to this for MaSa. The Viking comes in, and Stalker warped in very quickly. He's going to focus fire the probes. That's what you want to do with that. 2 probe kills. 3 gets a 4th. Nicely done. Well worth it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best you can do that, because if you go for the Stalker will run away eventually, and another unit gets warped in. Even though the Viking wins a one-on-one fight against the Stalker, if the Stalker is not being microed, of course these guys will micro. And indeed, the one mine connecting with the Stalker. I feel like a lot of little trades so far that have gone very well for MaSa, but nothing game-ending yet, of course.
SKillous recognizing what he's up against. He sees the Widow Mine, he sees the tank, and he says, I'm going to have none of that.
Yeah.
I am not going in there. MaSa would love these Blink Stalkers to get overly aggressive right now. We've got Charge, +1, and Colossus on the way. Did he actually just cancel Charge?
Yep, I think. Wow.
Yeah, he's prioritizing the third base and the Colossus. He realizes MaSa's going to be sitting back for a long time. There's no need to get that Charge. You're still going to have probably about 4 minutes before an impactful big battle happens, maybe at least 3 minutes. So you've got a long time before you can start that. Instead, gets a few more gateways, gets the third, gets the Colossus. SKillous going to go for a real ground-pounding army here.
I do hope for SKillous that he gets Thermal Lens this game, and there we go, he does fire it up. Because in the previous game, maybe he felt confident, he was so far ahead. It's like, it's not that important against a push like this, especially if the Marine count becomes that high, and the tank count is going to be a little bit higher as well. It is very important. I think the quick loss is actually a pretty brilliant call.
Oh my gosh, that Stalker micro.
If you look at the production tactic, it's like 6, 7 Marines at a time, and if there is one unit that Marines don't like to face, it's the Colossus.
Yeah, it's a nightmare, especially if you're all in with 5 barracks on 2 base. You kind of have this urgency when you're pushing to shove your way in. And if the Protoss comes out into the open and lets you flank him, yeah, you're going to crush it with your overwhelming bio. But if the Protoss is patient, as SKillous has shown he's able to, he can just micro back behind his buildings. And every single Colossus swipe on your Marines is absolutely deadly. So you kind of have to get bunkers up. You've got to use your siege tanks. And if you lose those siege tanks even once to, say, a good charge lot kind of dive in, good bit of Blink Stalker focus fire, you're just out of the game. You cannot break Colossus, Stalker, Zealot with pure Marine.
I think all of the extra sentries are quite smart for SKillous as well. That means that he should have multiple Guardian shields. He's going to see this. The boys are moving out as well. The SCVs are being pulled. The Stalkers are still going to try to buy a little bit of time. 4 shield batteries now being wiped in. That blink, of course, was very unfortunate. And those Stalkers, he kind of needs those Stalkers as well, because you don't just want to rely on your Colossus. Well, that's a big army of MaSa moving out. 73 army supply against the 51 of SKillous. But like I said, there are quite a few sentries in the mix here.
Force fields could be absolutely devastating. It does only get a few SCVs up front, but he forces the siege up. Yep. It's a good pullback from SKillous. He's buying time. He is making so many units right now. I believe a third Colossus is already on the field, and those are going to be so good against these siege tanks and against clearing the Marines. If the Zealots ever make contact with the tanks, that's where MaSa's army falls apart. He's adding bunkers. I love that choice.
Wow, SKillous even now is going to maybe move out, try to pick off a couple of these reinforcements. You could say that's a risky call, but he does have the shield batteries there. Finds a couple of Marines, wants to get the tank though on the left side. The medevac saves it.
Nice save there by MaSa. MaSa realizing his reinforcements are cut off. He's got to make this happen a little bit quicker. He can't take on these Stalkers. The Stalkers just picking off those Marines very nicely. SKillous making a stronger and stronger army. Every second that goes by, the Protoss power grows and the Terran army grows stronger in comparison. It's happening! The Chancellor's diving forward! Colossus landing some big hits, but the Zealots evaporating in the face of this Terran army. The Stalkers blinking from the north side, taking out many of the siege tanks. One tank on red hit points in the back barely survives, and the 2 bunkers standing strong. The Marines diving into that natural. I think MaSa has managed to break through.
Enough bunkers and enough siege tanks by the looks of it. There are still 3 Colossus, and those Colossus are always going to do great against the Marines, but now SKillous has lost so many of his workers. He lost a couple of production facilities, and he can still fall back. Both tanks are damaged. Both tanks are low, but is it good enough for MaSa? I mean, he's mining more now. But if the tanks on siege are big, this is still quite close, right? Oh, SKillous got to cherish every unit, and that's what he does there. He lost 22 pros, but it's still 3 against 2 bases.
Yeah, I feel like as MaSa here, you got to be real careful. Utilize those Vikings. Nice little poke on the Colossus, but the Blink Micro is good. SKillous going to protect those. The shield battery is going to help them out as well. The tank bunker position, I think MaSa needs to hold this position and needs to just, he's building more tanks, he's building more Vikings. He's poking out and around with these drops.
That's really good.
But I think he cannot push forward. If he ever gives up the bunker position, he will get smashed by the Colossus. As long as he just is very patient, I think MaSa has the advantage.
Yeah, but that's why I love what MaSa just did here, right? Like, he still protects that position that you just mentioned on the right side. Repaired the siege tanks as well during all of this, but zoned out enough Marines just to get 5-6 more probe kills. SKillous, it seems like he wants to get another engagement. The Colossus are getting great swipes off. but the tanks are still going strong. Blinks forward. SKillous may, in the end, finally clean this up, but he lost so many workers.
Oh, and that one siege tank, those two punkers still standing strong in the back. The shield battery's doing some work. I mean, this position's looking a little bit messy here for MaSa. I think, I don't know, at this point, does he swap into more Vikings at home? He's going to lose this position now. I don't think MaSa can hold on. These three Colossus coming forward, the bunkers, the Viking, and that micro, the shield battery! The Colossus stays alive!
Another tank in the bank there. Oh, that tank could potentially look at the HP of all of these Marines. They have been stimmed to death almost, but a couple of them do survive. 29 workers against 25. Big 1-1 upgrades for SKillous, 1-0 for MaSa. But MaSa can, of course, always lift up one of those orbital commands that he has in his main base. Maybe go down. I mean, SKillous' army is still scary, though. What's the Viking count?
There's just nothing to deal with the Colossus. Only 2 Vikings. You cannot take them down. The siege tank's going to be good. The problem is those Marines need to be perfectly spread. They need to be fighting not in front of the tank, not behind it. They need to be in line in a big spread.
Oh my goodness, this is a crazy move. SKillous actually decides to go for it, and it seems like he will go for it. Zealots are going to run forward. This one tank pick, the tank is so important.
Those Marines very clumped up. Their CV's trying to pull off the line to help this out. This siege tank is shooting sentries right now. That is not the important target. It needs to focus fire those Colossus.
Obviously, there's no Warp Prism, there's no quick way for SKillous to reinforce here. And like SKillous can do that again. That tank is still healthy. There's barely any anti-air. Colossus will finally go down. MaSa finally gets one of those big 3. And I think MaSa is looking in a good position now.
Finally, I really thought he was about to be broken there, but the second tank on the ramp, the Viking micro has been impeccable. He starts to drop, he gets spotted, and he immediately says, let's go back and rejoin the army, because he knows... Oh, that's a very dangerous drop path there from MaSa.
Yeah, or maybe he was trying to bait him into tank shots.
Yeah,
like, go for it, Blink.
Yeah, you can see he's constantly kind of poking out, having a scout around. SKillous adding a few more gases here. I mean, I guess you can go into some Archon charge lot behind this. Stalkers,
Every unit is so important now, so that's a bit sloppy there by the young SKillous. He really needs to preserve his Stalker count. He needs to keep him alive. Now, obviously, as long as the tanks are not siege, maybe he can this time actually blink into the main base, maybe get a unit or two, because obviously what goes for SKillous also kind of goes for MaSa. This is now a very low eco game, so if SKillous can just get a couple of SCVs here and a couple of Marines or Marauders, it could already be good. Maybe MaSa can set up a flank on the low ground, or is he going to recall?
He's going to look for the recall, I think. He's going to have to jump down. Yeah, good blink into recall. Fantastic control by SKillous. Does get 5 SCVs, loses 1 Stalker just barely.
What do you think about MaSa building another command center now?
I think MaSa, if he pushes across this map, his army is trash. I think Colossus swipes will land on the Marines. It's very hard to protect your tanks. Kind of consolidate that with the Vikings. Yeah, he's getting some more Marauders in there now, so it is becoming a meatier composition. But I actually like this choice by MaSa. I think the way to just say, let's just build up to the 3 base. I can counter drop, I can harass, and he knows that his opponent's still only on 2 bases as well. So this is just a safe way of slowly moving forwards in this game.
I do like that he's floating over the orbital, because I kind of felt that that was the right play, but obviously doing both at the same time, he can absolutely get away with it. Yeah. I think the most important thing here for MaSa is to get a few more tanks, right? Because SKillous is moving out again. He's getting a War Prism as well, pick. It's all about the tanks. If he keeps the tanks alive, and of course maybe the Vikings to some degree.
His SCVs are really exposed as well right now. He's got to pull them back really quickly.
I do like the tank on the high ground. One Viking does go down. The SCVs, Colossus can get a couple of great swipes off.
Run! Those SCVs need to get out of there. Oh man, already a bunch of them going down. But the Vikings, the tanks threatening. There we go, those Stalkers very fragile. Both players' armies not wanting to step into the wrong situation right now. And I love MaSa's slow expansion out here. He's on 1-1 upgrades, he's adding more Marines, tanks, Liberators. The only problem here is that with his upgrades frozen, with his Marauder count relatively low and a lot of siege units, MaSa's army is not very good at moving across the map. It's very siege-oriented, it's very slow. I'd love to see him sneak some drops across and try to pull SKillous' attention away, but SKillous on 2 base, he's essentially all in with this army. He's looking to catch MaSa out of position. He wants to fish for some mistakes.
Yeah, and the Colossus can actually get a few more hits off on these SCVs over here from the south side, so that is quite good. But the tank count is at 5 right now. So technically, there should always be a tank in a good position, right? There are a couple of Zealots being annoying in the main base, but you don't want to lose that War Prism right now, SKillous. SKillous is expanding, by the way, perhaps looking at the tank count, looking at these Vikings, and even the Liberators that MaSa's added, and he's like, you know what? I can't break him here. And Pick, this game will just carry on.
Dude, that's really fluid decision-making from SKillous. Just choosing to do that. He says, look, I can't break you. I've killed a few SCVs, but you're clearly in this turtle mode right now. Dropping the third, going into the comeback unit, the Disruptor, realizing that he needs something that can get some big splash damage done and potentially pull him back into this game.
Look at that Scout, almost immediately.
That's a lot of Stalkers. He can take that out.
Wow, the Zealot, the moment that command center landed, the Zealot was there, spots it, Stalkers blink forward. SKillous will take down this command center, and now MaSa perhaps feeling that it's his time to move out again. He's bringing SCVs as well, Pick. There are Disruptors on the way. No, careful with the Stalkers. Oh my goodness. Thought he was just going to run into all those tanks. I was like, well, hello, that Disruptor Piggy on the left side.
Oh, a gigantic shot! Does manage to take out a few Marauders and Marines. Good reactions by MaSa. This is what SKillous needs to do. He's got to slow down this advance, but he can't eat those tank volleys. He's got to engage, disengage, re-engage. That's the name of the game for the Protoss player. He has to pick away at this and try to take advantage of the slow movement of these siege units. But MaSa, look at the way he's leapfrogging. Tanks liberate, he's covering each other. He's moving his other tanks forwards. His Vikings trying to bait his opponent into a bad position. Oh, the Stalk is eating some massive tank shots. A few Vikings go down, but so do a Colossi.
Exactly.
That's a great trade for MaSa, and now he's got position on the third base.
Yeah, but the tanks are a little bit exposed, so I guess this is the moment that SKillous going to blink forward one more time. There is a Guardian Shield. How much work can this one Colossus do? Seems like the answer is not enough. The final Disruptor is not going to be enough. And seems like MaSa has finally done it here on New Repugnant. See if he can just avoid one or two more of those Purification Novas. Big.
Too many Marines, too many Marauders, and an intense back and forth game. We thought the tank push had done it, but then we thought SKillous had managed to break out and win the game. And finally here, after the crazy seesaw of this match, MaSa comes out on top, ties up the series 1-1.
That was an awesome game, absolutely awesome game. Felt so action-packed ever since the very first moment that MaSa moved out, which was like minute 8, I believe. It was non-stop fighting until minute 17 there in the end. Really hard to call. I must say, great moves and great decision-making on both sides. And that's a silly thing to say, but they really did both make a couple of excellent decisions, some very mature decision-making while being under a lot of pressure. I love SKillous' confidence every time he just looks to cut off reinforcements with 5-6 Blink Stalkers while he's being contained. I love MaSa's call to eventually retreat, eventually expand, and also analyzing. He's like, all right, my Marines are going to be fine as long as they survive against your Colossus. I need more tanks. And getting 5-6 tanks there, I think was a brilliant call by MaSa. What an awesome game.
Yeah, if there wasn't quite so many tanks, he might have been able to pick in from the edges. But man, it was just such good play on both sides. And I'm just thinking about, I'm wondering if DTs would have been the ultimate unit in that weird low economy situation there towards the end. It's something where it's like such a gamble because you're already building Disruptors. Like, let's go for the 2 units that just kind of thrive in the chaos, but you're gutting your army if you do that as SKillous. His economy was very weak at about 40 probes. Either way, a good attempt from him, a good attempt from both sides. Bly on fire. I do like the chaos
Was this awesome?
In some of these matches.
This was absolutely awesome. I mean, I think we were both smiling quite a bit during that match. This is really cool to see this being so back and forth. We talked about it quite a bit. It's like, okay, it's really hard to judge these two because they don't play against each other a lot. But I definitely have the feeling that this should be a pretty evenly well matched. First game, SKillous made a couple of great decisions. Second game, I think, was just awesome from both sides.
Absolutely. Just back and forth action. And I don't know, there's cheesy matches which people get excited for, but this is the best sort of action-packed match where it kind of gets stuck in this low economy zone, but there's so many decisions being made on both sides. The positioning becomes so intense, especially when you've got units like that. Colossus just devastate the Marines, but the tanks and the Vikings devastate the Colossus and the Stalkers, and the positioning becomes so intense. That's a true test, and that's the sort of baptism in fire that these young players like SKillous get when they finally get up on the stage. They've got an audience cheering for them, a lot of people excited, And when they can stay cool under fire like that, it gives us a lot of hope for his chances in the rest of this series.
And you know, there was so much happening that we couldn't even always call it out. But what I truly loved as well is how many traps MaSa set up there, how many baits. It's like, hey, here's a medevac. Hey, here's my Vikings. You should really blink forward. And then there were always tanks covering these Vikings.
Yeah.
And this one trade as well that you mentioned, like, yes, the Vikings were exposed, but that was part of the plan. They took out one of the last 2 Colossus remaining, and then there were 3 tanks on the right side. And New Repugnancy, obviously a great map for some tank positioning as well. So that was an awesome trade because it was Stalkers for a couple Vikings, 4 Colossus, and the tanks were obviously unscathed. So, you know, he's losing Stalkers and a Colossus, while MaSa only lost a couple Vikings. I truly thought that was a very well calculated move by the Canadian.
Absolutely. We are going to be going to the next map in just a short while. It's going to be Year 0, which is a very big map. And it's the best of 5 stage, and this makes me so happy. There's no... You know, it would be a crime if this series finished just 1 more game. But we get at least 2 more games. Fingers crossed for 3, personally. I'm just so happy we've got so many more chances for these players to redeem themselves if they lose some matches early. You know, we've really, I feel, found the best 24 players going into this final bracket. Going to go up to 16, then the top 8, and then onwards, of course. And a lot of fan favorites still in there, but a few newcomers as well starting to really make their mark.
The next map is going to be played on Year 0, a much bigger map than the previous 2 maps we have seen. Over here on the right top side, we're looking at the main base of the man who has just tied up this series with some awesome play on New Repugnancy. It is our Canadian WCS Challenger winner. It is MaSa. And of course, guys, when I say winner, I don't mean that he beat Neep, but he is one of the 4 guys that did win an all-expenses-paid trip to this event.
And a beautiful high seeding point as well. Of course, up here in the top left, representing Wolfpack in the red, it's SKillous.
Do you think, Big, we are going to see some Phoenix Colossus over here?
I would not be surprised on this map, Roddy. Good map to kind of turtle things up and have that compact composition, of course. Even though if you look at the minimap, it looks like there's a big black area on the top side. Most of that you can't fly through. It's filled up by Amon's gigantic head. He's a bit of a cocky guy. He's got a big ego, and he's blocking. So flyer units actually don't have a lot of pars, and with Phoenix Colossus, you want that to be limited so a lot of drops can't slide through from many angles. You want to make it real kind of simple with the areas you can control, and you want to have a nice compact 3 bases far away from your opponent so you can just build up that incredibly high-tech army.
Of course, the other argument for SKillous' previous strategies is that you can also say this is a pretty good map to open Blink Stalkers. Drops in general, at least early drops, are going to arrive quite a bit later. And if MaSa does go for some sort of a move out, there's a lot of kiting abilities there for these Stalkers. They can just shave off Marine after Marine. You know, this is not a map like Cyber Forest where maybe you can have 2 or 3 defensive blinks before you push back into your natural. No, you're going to be able to do that 4 or 5 or even 6 times on a map this size. So I think both strategies that SKillous likes to play are very strong here. Let's see which one he decides to go for.
Is going to be that command center going down there for MaSa. Factory following that up nice and early. Both players just kind of expanding and building up for now. It's funny, we're seeing a lot more mech in this matchup, but if there's one guy who's definitely not going to do that, in my opinion, it's MaSa. Bio for life, drops for life. Marine Marauder Micro is the name of the game for him. He is just in his element, using multi-prong, using positioning, hitting from many sides.
There is our Stargate being dropped in the main base of SKillous. Now, of course, this doesn't necessarily mean that it will be Phoenix Colossus. There is a good chance that he goes for an Oracle into Blink as well. Because if you like doing that on Cyber Forest, which I personally think is kind of crazy because that map is so small, this single pylon right away prevents the Reaper from hopping up. There's only one perfect spot to drop that single pylon, but one pylon can actually prevent the Reaper from getting into the main base. I think Oracle into Blink would be good here. Phoenix Colossus would also be good. MaSa's adding a tech lab, by the way. Is that just for a Widowmine, you think? Or maybe a Cyclone?
Yeah, you know, sometimes you will see a Cyclone early, but other times we've seen Tunneling Claws or Drilling Claws come in. It's a very, very weird to see at this level of play because it's such an expensive upgrade.
Cloak Banshee is an option. Maybe a quick Raven. No, there it's actually going to be a Cyclone for now. So SKillous is going to go forward, and he is opening up with the Phoenix pick, so we were not completely off.
Yeah, Phoenix play very useful. The ability to pick up and just shut down early aggression, very nice. Of course, the Phoenix very weak in a frontal engagement. not
just
contributing
depends
a lot.
how many you have, Big. If you have 3 or 4, I agree with you, but you never stop building Phoenix, Big. That's the secret strategy.
You just got to get that +1 upgrade, right? Get up to 14 or 15, and they're suddenly not too bad.
If you just lift everything, nothing can shoot at you anymore. That's the high IQ play. This Adept is going to commit. We only get 2 shots off on these Marines. SKillous perhaps just wanted to make sure that he knew what was happening.
Ooh.
If I would scout that, by the way, I'd be a tiny bit confused because there is no guarantee that you now know what's coming out of that Starcraft, right? It could be a Raven, but it could also be a Banshee. But there is a Robo going down as well for SKillous, so he's technically safe against everything.
You got to be real careful with that Raven against the Phoenix opening as well. The number of games I've seen where it pops out as the 3 Phoenix fly over the starport and you just lose the Raven instantly. That's a devastating loss. So it's going to be very useful as this game progresses, the Raven, if you can keep it alive, but you've really got to babysit it.
The big if there, right? Because there is one Cyclone. One Cyclone cannot protect this Raven. The Marines who need to come out as well. The Marines are heading towards the main base. It seems like the Zelnaga Watchtower has spotted it. So this Raven needs to stay safe, and it will stay safe because the second Cyclone pop now as well. Immediately SKillous sees that MaSa is going up to 3 bases, and I can only assume that SKillous will immediately go up to 3 bases as well. And then I do truly believe we get ready for some Phoenix Colossus gameplay.
Yeah, looks like it. A 3rd Cyclone on the way here from MaSa, Roddy. That's highly unusual. There could be...
Wow, he is mech.
Wow.
Second, at least for now, second factory.
Even MaSa? I never thought MaSa would be a mecha, but hey,
a lot
not
of
in this
Terrans.
matchup.
Yeah, a lot of Terrans like to say if they go up against Phoenix, it actually makes some sense to go mech because they really think mech is quite good. We saw Hero Marine, we didn't cast the game, but we saw Hero Marine ending up with a very scary, brutal final game mech army. The one thing, these Phoenixes, by the way, SKillous is playing a dangerous game. The one thing that's often nice is when, Protoss players open up with Phoenix, they like to get Colossus quickly behind it because they feel they really need the Colossus against the Marines. Because they're very worried about stim pushes.
Yeah.
But Colossus, of course, not that great. A good double lock there by MaSa. Hey, these Cyclones have been doing an awesome job for MaSa. And is SKillous even 100% sure that he's playing against mech? Because he's going double forge now. I mean,
okay, does have one sneaky observer coming in. Looks like he's deciding to go for the double upgrades despite knowing it's mech. And yeah, the Twilight Council goes down. You really want to swap into that charge lot, immortal sort of army. You can have a few Colossus in there. Some people like to go Disruptors. You can play Blink Disruptor as a sort of zoning army against mech for a long time, but it's very bad in a pitched battle if the mech is sieged up. Like, you can't really break through an entrenched position. You can just slow down the advance of the mech player a lot.
SKillous only using one of his 2 forges so far. What I do like is that he didn't commit to Thermalence this game because I really don't think that Colossus is the dream here. Obviously, having 1 or 2 later on against a lot of Hellbats or Hellions would be quite nice, but early on it's really not about the Colossus. It's about, like you said, those Archons, those Immortals.
Oh, Plasma Shields is coming in there as well. That's yeah, just for the Archons as well, I guess, right?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty decent choice. I mean, if he is really going to rely on these Archons, and a lot of people often think that the reason why mech is not good in this matchup, but they like to say it's not good, is because of the Immortal. But it's not just about the Immortal, it's a lot about the Archons as well. It's about the anti-air ability of the Archons to eventually deal with the Liberators and everything that flies. So prioritizing Archon upgrades here, and of course Immortals do benefit from that upgrade as well. I actually think it's kind of a smart play by SKillous.
Yeah, nice little adjustment there. Is adding extended thermal lance, so still seems to want to be able to have a few Colossus switch. I mean, they can clear Hellions and Mines very quickly, so having a few in there is not the worst thing in the world. Hyperflight Rotors on the way, as well as Balloon Flame, Warp Prism, Zealots. Both players just kind of respecting each other's ability to kind of build up and have a large army. 63 probes out for SKillous. No 4th base on the way. I do like a fast 4th base against mech, so I'd like to see SKillous drop that Nexus in the next few seconds,
But I also think he's maybe perhaps starting to get a tiny bit worried because he's been spending a lot of money on infrastructure, right? And a lot on upgrades. Don't forget, those Phoenixes are pretty expensive units as well. And I can sort of understand that he feels like he can do everything at once. We're getting extra gates. He is going to 4 base now, and he's dropping it in. What do you think about dropping it here rather than the left bottom side? I guess you can say it's easy to defend the middle line against Banshees maybe, but it also is closer towards a potential tank army that we could eventually see.
Definitely weaker to a tank push, right, Roddy? But if you're worried about Cyclones running in and just locking onto the Nexus and taking it down, it is a bit easier to protect. So, bit of tit for tat there. The Banshees are going to come in on the south side, take out a few of these probes. Hellions going down in the middle of the map there. Zealots, Archons, and Colossus starting to posture forwards. Not a lot of siege tanks out here.
There's only one.
Oh!
There's only one tank, but there is a couple of interference matrices available here. And these Cyclones are going to lock on the majority of these units. The Phoenix is going to try to help out when the Matrix runs out. Can SKillous turn this battle around?
Oh, one Colossus at the front does end up going down due to the lock-ons there. A lot of Colossi and Hellions still alive, but the Zealots are getting into the mineral line. SKillous finding that weak exposed mineral line. It's only these low damage, low hit point units out here for the Terran mech. Where are the siege tanks right now?
He only had one tank, but there is no observer here, Pig. So these Banshees will go completely uncontested. MaSa has been sniping observer after observer. So even though this looked terrible for MaSa in the beginning, and he did lose a lot of SCVs, I think in the end, that actually went quite well for MaSa because he survives with a lot of units, and SKillous really doesn't have a lot left right now that fights.
Yeah, that's actually crazy how much that turned around. Banshee's one of the highest damage units in the game, and those 3 Banshees did manage to clear up all those important tech units. Remember, guys, SKillous had not probed the 4th base. This isn't that player who knew it was mech from the get-go and is up at 85 or 90 workers. SKillous is only at 68 probes, and he's desperately trying to rebuild his army right now. He's trying to come back in here with the Zealots in the Warp Prism. Does actually go down. That's huge. That was his only presence on MaSa's side of the map. MaSa's already tied up the supply count again. And just a pack of Zealots and Stalkers. SKillous here, he's stuck on a pretty small economy. He's stuck on a low-tier army. And just look at the complexity of MaSa. He's got 2-1 upgrades on the way. Banshees starting to move around and harass from all sides. He's even just poking towards the army there. Tanks coming in 2 at a time. Cyclones and Hellions being added in as well.
Now, one of the things I think that hurts SKillous the most in this game is that he's playing this all of a single robo. And MaSa has done such a good job in sniping those observers over and over again that there is just nothing really else. These Banshees just going ham at this point. The Phoenixes from the beginning of the game, they went down. And this is actually becoming quite painful. There is a revelation right now, so he's going to be able to keep tracking it. But look at the DPS of these Banshees. Stalker after Stalker goes down. And at this point, this is kind of it for SKillous. This army really needs to get some magic done, and I don't really think it's capable of that, Big.
Yeah, not at all. Another observer goes down to the scan and the lock on there. The Cyclones even doing okay against those Zealots.
That's so good, by the way, by MaSa. That's the 5th observer he has taken out this game. The 5th observer of a single robo build. On top of that, a War Prism went down. Now there's a 2nd Prism. No wonder there are no Immortals. There is a low Colossus count, and it keeps running out of observers because, once again, this is a single robo build, and MaSa is doing an awesome job in sniping those obs non-stop.
MaSa's 4th base is now established with a planetary fortress erecting at that base. 3 more factories on the way. 3 Banshees coming in here and once again finding weaknesses. The Banshee's always the biggest problem. If you don't have a large economy and your army is kind of lacking the complexity it needs, Banshees are so hard to deal with. MaSa all over this Warp Prism as well. It barely survives getting into that base, but surely not going to be able to stay alive for long in there.
Well, he's going to be able to maybe wipe in a couple of Zealots, and that's exactly what he did. At the same time, SKillous is moving his army forward in the middle of the map. Gets a pretty good fight there against at least these tanks for now. A lot of SCVs going down in the main base. I mean, the Banshees will help out, but MaSa can't ignore this army. This is still an army that, you know, he's going to have to micro against quite a bit.
Yeah, still a very scary force from the Protoss player there. The lock-ons over time, though, do get insane value. And MaSa still tied in workers. Even though his main kind of got thrown into a little bit of chaos there, his upgrades are continuing, and they are starting to outstrip the Protoss, who's at 1-1-1 up against 2-1, soon to be 3-2 upgrades. Blinkers on the way as well as more Colossus. MaSa is up 40 supply. He's just got to make sure that ground army doesn't take a bad engagement. He's got to make sure he's got his siege tanks in a nice defensible position. His Banshees can keep on doing the counterattack damage, but he's got to keep his Cyclones and Hellions alive.
That's only going to be quite a few Stalkers there. This really comes down to the engagement. MaSa's army looks stronger, looks bigger and more powerful. Gets the War Prism there immediately. Where's that Oracle, by the way? He needs to attack these Banshees.
Oh man, the Colossus just disappears. That's just too many Banshees. MaSa realizing he's got the larger army. He's going to dive in and just encircles it. Comes in with a big wraparound, shuts down the Stalkers. And with that, SKillous army is reset. The Banshee fleet still alive. A lot of the Hellions going down, but the complex gas units, the Cyclones, almost all of them survive.
And that was beautiful. It came down to the engagement. And MaSa's like, well, I'll take this engagement because it's the best engagement ever for me. You're going to lose your Warp Prism immediately. And that was just awkward for SKillous. He was trapped and just really did not have an answer against all these forces. Does land a feedback or two there, I believe. Zealots are going to look forward. Hey, there's a Colossus coming in from the left side. That helps out a little bit. But these Zealots have their work cut out for them.
Yeah, as the charge resets, that is going to be nice. But 10 Blue Flame Aliens rally in. The Banshees evaporate the Colossus. I didn't realize Colossus were just made out of smoke and gas, but the Banshees just flick them and they disappear just like that. The Cyclones, the Aliens diving in. Another Observer goes down. This has been a sad, sad map for those Observers.
GG is called. MaSa will take game 3. And I was just taking a little look at the units resources lost there in the end. 22,000 resources lost for SKillous, only 13 for MaSa. And I think that kind of just shows how well MaSa played there with his units.
Yeah.
And it just had a lot of great decisions when it comes to when he had to make the Hellions, when he should have made more Cyclones. Going low on the tanks at first seemed like a risky play, but then the Banshees showed up and there was no more detection. Yeah. And I really think those Banshees turned everything around.
The Banshees being the absolutely crucial part of the composition there. You know, the rest of the army, it can kind of be dealt with Zealots, with Immortals, with Archons, even Colossus. But the Banshees are not easily dealt with. You need detection and you need a lot of anti-air. We saw that a couple of Stalkers not too useful against them when they're getting shot down that fast. Was it a Stalker Warpin was being two-shot by the 4 Banshees? SKillous never really getting into the fully established situation you'd want against that army. Very much even in economy for the majority of that game. I think losing the Phoenix early and having his Observers just systematically shut down, it put him into a place where he felt like he didn't know what MaSa was up to. He said, I've got to respect the push. You were saying how, you know, you're losing some Phoenix, you're losing Observers. You don't feel like you can just take a 4th base, take 80 probes, take double forge upgrades and 2 robos and all the rest. But because of that, he didn't have enough material out, and MaSa doing some very nice mech play, some beautiful variants from the Terran player, really surprising us there.
Yep, I totally echo your sentiments there when it comes to shutting down the Phoenix play, because I think that takes the momentum away so early on off SKillous, and that is a very expensive investment for a Protoss play in the beginning of the game. A Stargate, 5-6 Phoenixes, those are just not meant to kill 4 or 5 SCVs, no. Yeah. They are supposed to stay there forever, maybe get a Raven, at least be very good against the Banshees, lift up a couple of Cyclones if they're exposed, and create that massive worker lead that SKillous, unfortunately for him, just never had.
All right, well, we are going to be going into map number 3 here and representing OSC Elite. Map number 4, sorry. Looking for one more game to close it out in the blue. It's MaSa.
And he doesn't have enough SCVs in his main base pick. We're going to talk about that real soon. Let's see if this young man can keep his composure here on stage. He has played a fantastic WCS spring already. Can he send us to game 5? It is SKillous.
Oh my. There's no gas, Roddy.
It's just a lot of Marines. Marines and bunkers.
This is a proxy Marine rush.
Is he going full NA on us? No, there is a gas being taken right now.
Okay, so he's going to take a gas now. All right, all right.
But I'm still a bit confused about the order of everything. So
Marauder Rush. It's a 2x Marauder Rush,
Does he have enough gas for that? We're taking it this late?
I think you take a second gas for this as well, right? Because Marauders are pretty cheap, right?
So maybe it's one...
one Marine first into a bunker, I guess? I don't know. The gas is a fake, right? I have no idea. Let's learn together, Roddy. This could be a 2x Marine bunker rush. I don't know. It's very confusing because you see that gas, and I guess you're expecting Marauders with how late that gas is. I mean, SKillous can click on that gas, see that it's a really late gas. And he's going to be trying to figure this out. 2-rack Marine. The SCV's looking to start that bunker, but it wants to do it by surprise. The Nexus goes down in the face of this.
Okay, now this is going to be a very tough call already for SKillous, right? Because what do you do? Do you pull probes? The answer is yes. He does pull probes. I guess he wants to get a battery up as soon as possible.
He's got to pull more than that, though. That's not a lot of probes. They can only take down 1 Marine. Once you get to 3, you can't fight that. That's not enough probes, Roddy.
Nope, this is actually starting to look really bad already for SKillous. He is working on one of these SCVs, but he's not going to be able to get it up. 4 probes went down before SKillous really got anything done here. Now this Zealot alone, that's not going to be enough either. I say cancel the Nexus, and that's exactly what SKillous does here. But he lost 4 probes on top of all of this, Big.
Yeah, that's huge damage. Those Marines, though, they're going way too deep right now. That's a bit ambitious there for MaSa. He's going to lose some of these to that Stalker. Good micro from SKillous. Hunting down one of those Marines, going to damage some of the others as well. And behind this, a factory is on the way. MaSa basically doing the TVZ build here. This is literally the sort of timings you would do with a TVZ 2 racks. You just go into a factory, Hellions, Banshees, usually behind it, a delayed expansion, but your opponent's pinned back on one base, and this just messes up the game for the Protoss player. It gives you a really nice lead because you're not only equal on workers, but you're dropping mules as well.
And you're still a bit contained, don't forget about that. MaSa obviously knows what SKillous is doing, or at least to some degree, he knows where SKillous is at in this game, and SKillous is actually quite in the dark. He brought back his scouting probe as well, because that was the one that eventually got picked off by those Marines on the ramp, and that means that right now SKillous has absolutely nothing that's being active out on the map. He's not down and out, but this is a very uncomfortable position to be in as a Protoss.
Yeah, just used the Stalker shields there to get some damage on the bunker, but MaSa comes back in with a Reddit point SCV, repairs it up. We see Blink on the way for SKillous. And that, of course, allows you to bypass this position to quickly get across the map and put on some big damage. Those barracks have a long way to float home, Roddy. I do like that he's committing 1 barracks to scouting, but the Blink will take that out very quickly. And it's just one of these things where MaSa, he's ahead. He's way up in workers. He's getting better infrastructure, but this Blink Stalker timing attack can still be deadly. And that's something which MaSa is going to have to be prepared for at home.
Yeah, I like him sacrificing the 1 barracks for a lot of reasons. A, it might keep SKillous a bit busy, right? B, it's a great, excellent scout. But C, how often do Terran players sacrifice their barracks, right? If there is a Cyclone follow-up, and now if you're SKillous, you might be a tiny bit worried. It's like, okay, is he about to hit me with Cyclones? What kind of weird stuff is happening behind all of this? So this barracks is A, great scout, but B, also causes a lot of confusion for SKillous.
Absolutely. The Stalkers and Zealots ready to break out now. SKillous realizing he doesn't have the time to waste trying to hunt down that barracks. He needs to be across this map and putting on pressure as quickly as possible. He's going to dive over there and start the Blink pressure. A bunker, though, is already finishing at home. A Banshee is getting ready with Cloak. There is no detection. And MaSa, has he got a siege tank out? No tank.
So you could maybe, I wouldn't even try to kill the bunker, right? If you're SKillous, you probably blink past it, but that's so scary, guys. It's very, very easy for us to say, yeah, just blink past the bunker. Like, this is his tournament live that's on the line. Do you really want to commit into something what you don't know? What if there is a tank way back? Can you really do it? Let's see if SKillous decides to go for it. Well, Blink is done. Is he going to blink past? The answer is yes. SKillous shows no fear, but that tank is 70% done.
And the SCVs can pull in here as well. The Marines getting a little bit exposed. Good focus fire there by SKillous to focus down the Marines. The tank comes out in the face of those Stalkers, but there's not enough left to take it down. And yet another Stalker goes down. The SCVs dealing some good damage, as does the Siege tank, and that has been rejected and pushed back. The Marine landing in the corner of the main. MaSa getting his style points on right now. The veteran of Chaos. The cheeser of the NA Challenger. The proxier of barracks. MaSa here, ready to cause some chaos.
Banshee's already in the main base. Cloak is done. Shield battery not done yet. Robo not done anywhere near. Now Cloak Banshee is going to help out at home as well. SKillous is in a lot of trouble. He's going in deep. He wants to get a tank. He focused on the SCV there.
Accidental focus fire. These Stalkers desperately trying to get some damage done. But the Banshee there, no answer to the Cloak Banshee. The SCVs get a bit of a surround as well. The Stalkers doing their best to micro. Energy actually does run out on the Banshee. SKillous microing his heart out right now. Is actually going to be able to take out that Banshee. He dodges some of those Banshee shots. Manages to focus it down. His economy has been gutted back at home though.
It's a tank against 4 or 5 Stalkers, though. I mean, that's kind of all there is right now, right? But I guess that is going to be enough. There's 1 low HP Marine helping out as well. Don't forget, MaSa's got 2 orbital commands. So it's not just the fact that MaSa has way more workers. SKillous is incredibly committed. He says it's now or never for my tournament live. He just wants to win the game here, Pig, in the next 30, 40 seconds. And if he doesn't do it, it's all over.
Yeah, the Marines are still building in the corner of his main base as well. MaSa just waiting to show those Marines. You can go in and kind of wedge them between the minerals, and even with his shield battery there, the probes will not be able to deal with those Marines very easily, and you'll take a lot of losses. Stalker's coming in. One last desperate push. A Banshee, 2 Marines, and a pack of Drilly boys. I think it's going to be enough. That front-running unit goes down. The Banshee has Cloak, remember. It can just pick away at these units so easily.
I think the Ops is about to come.
Oh,
SKillous!
it's sitting back.
He's going to bring it forward now. Gets the Banshee on the left. He gets a couple of... But that's the second tank right now. We're talking about 2 tanks from this point on, Pig.
Wow, the tank shots are just too much. The Stalker's blinking forward desperately, but it is not going to be enough. Both tanks stand strong. The double mules dropping. MaSa adding a Raven to be safe, to ensure his victory, building Marines both in his base and his opponent's base, bringing out the style points, and of course, SKillous, this is his tournament life on the line. He's not going to tap out until he knows there is absolutely no chance of victory. He's going to come in with his few Zealots and a pair of Stalkers. And yeah, here we go. The Marines finally showing their hand. And that's going to be that. SKillous realizing he's got nothing. He has to tap out. GG.
MaSa advanced.